What would you do if the enemy was sleeping in your home? Pray or act? In the ancient pages of history, one woman carried no sword, wore no crown, and spoke no prophecies. Yet her actions brought an entire army to its knees. Her name was Jael, a wife living in the lonely desert where Kenite tents huddled among barren hills. She was no warrior, no leader, but in a fateful moment when the shadow of oppression crushed God's people, the Lord used the hands of this woman to write a new chapter for Israel. This isn't just a story of war. It's about faith, grace, and the courage to step beyond fear. Follow the channel to uncover untold stories where God uses ordinary people for extraordinary purposes. Hit follow so you don't miss the next journey of faith and grace. In a sun-scorched land, where desert winds swirled through Piedal grass, the tents of the Kenites stood silent, as if holding their breath. In this near-forgotten place, far from fortified cities or thundering chariots, lived a woman named Jael, wife of Heber, a neutral nomad, neither allied with Israel nor siding with their oppressors. She was no warrior. No army followed her. No sword hid beneath her cloak. But in her heart beat a spirit that listened and had long stirred quietly at every rumor of suffering from a tormented people. News traveled faster than the wind. Israel was oppressed again. This time Sisera, a ruthless commander with 900 iron chariots, wrought misery on thousands. He ravaged the land, seized the old and young, and drove desperate prayers skyward, like ceaseless clouds of dust. Meanwhile, a woman named Deborah, prophetess and judge of Israel, rose with Barak, a warrior chosen by God. They rallied the people to fight, and once more Canaan trembled with the sound of hooves and the cries of war. But Jael's tent remained still on the border, caught between battle and silence. She heard that Sisera's army had fallen, that Israel had triumphed under Deborah's guidance and Barak's courage. She learned Sisera had fled, unguarded, wandering the hills like a wounded beast seeking refuge. Jael was quiet as always. She kindled the fire for dinner, mended a worn curtain, filled a water jug. But within her, a storm was brewing. A question churned in her mind. Can I stay on the sidelines forever? Though Heber, her husband, was a neutral Kenite, and their family had long lived in peace with the Canaanites, Jael could not shut her eyes to the blood spilled and the cries echoing from the horizon. She remembered the Israelites passing her tent, trembling as they begged for a sip of water, a crust of bread. She recalled the whispers of mothers hiding children under coarse cloth, fearing Sisera's soldiers, and she remembered, faintly like a distant echo, the stories of a just God, of a people led out of Egypt, and promises that the wicked would not prevail forever. Night fell like a heavy curtain. The moon hung in the sky, an eye of the Most High searching human hearts. Jael sat in her tent, fingers tracing coarse fabric, ears catching the wind's rustle through the flap. No one knew her thoughts, but in her heart a decision grew, silent but certain, like a seed sown in deep soil. She had no calling like Deborah. No angel appeared to her as to Gideon or Manoah. But she knew, sometimes God doesn't need the mighty, only the willing. Jael didn't know she stood at a crossroads of history where the choice of an unknown woman would become the decisive chapter in the battle between justice and tyranny. And when the heavy footsteps of an exhausted, desperate, Battle-stained man echoed outside her tent. She understood. The moment had come. No angel, no omen, just faith, and a heart that could no longer stay silent before evil. Jael rose, gently lifting the tent flap, her heart strangely calm. In the darkness, she was no longer an ordinary Kenite wife. She was a living witness to an ancient truth. God can use anyone, anywhere, when they dare to stand. And from that nameless desert, an act was written into history, not with ink, but with blood, with quiet courage, and with a faith that needed no words, only a choice. The sun bled toward the horizon, leaving a crimson streak across the ashen sky. The evening wind whipped through the Kenite desert, carrying the taste of sand and the last traces of daytime heat. In a tent of coarse, dark cloth, Jael prepared for the night, her movements slow and familiar, as if life were the same as any other day. But today, something stirred within her, a faint premonition, like the sky holding its breath before a storm. Then she heard it, the sound of hooves halting heavy, as if the horse bore a broken man. Jael froze, her hand still clutching a jug of milk, her heart quickening. In moments, a figure emerged through the dust. He pushed aside the tent flap, entering like a sudden gust, interrupting a prayer. Sisera, his name needed no introduction. Tall, his armor torn, his breath ragged, his eyes wild with panic. He stumbled in like a hunted beast seeking a den. He was the terror of countless Israelite families, the commander who razed villages, who silenced children's laughter and turned it into mothers' wails. But today, he was the one fleeing. "Give me water," he rasped. Not quite a command, not quite a plea. Jael said nothing. She met his gaze, a long, deep, silent look, like the sky before a tempest. Then she moved, opening a skin, but instead of water, she poured milk. Rarer, smoother, sweeter. A small act, but laced with a silent confrontation between instinct and God's will. She placed the jug in his hands, as if placing the weight of a decision into her own heart. Sisera drank greedily, then collapsed onto the tent floor, exhaustion pulling him into sleep like a weary child. But Jael could not rest. She sat, watching his form huddle in the corner, the flickering firelight dancing across a face that had sown terror. Now fragile, almost pitiable. Her mind became a battlefield. Could she spare a man who had taken countless lives? Did mercy have a place when justice lay trampled? And deeper still, a more terrifying question. Could she stand aside when God had clearly placed her in a pivotal moment of history? She recalled Deborah's words, the prophetess she'd never met, but whose name echoed everywhere. "The Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman." Those words now resounded in her mind like a vision. Not Deborah, not a gleaming warrior woman in armor, but her, Jael, an unknown Kenite wife, facing the fulfillment of prophecy in her own tent. Jael bowed her head, hands clenching her robe. No one could decide for her. No angel appeared, no fire fell from heaven, only a wicked man sleeping in her home and a quiet call within. "I placed you here in this hour for a purpose." And she understood. Grace is not always gentle. It can arrive in a moment of tension, where justice and mercy must be weighed in an ordinary person's hands. True faith isn't found in songs or rote prayers. True faith is daring to act when no one commands, simply because you know what is right. Outside, darkness cloaked the desert, but in Jael's tent, the light of a decision burned like a flame, steady, unyielding. Sisera, once proud astride iron chariots, now slept like a child in the tent of a woman he scorned. And in the silence, a storm was forming, not of wind or sand, but of righteousness awakening in the heart of a woman no one noticed. Jael was no Deborah, no Barak. She had no soldiers, no authority, but she had what mattered most, a heart that heard God's will and courage enough not to turn away. And that night, when the world thought the war had ended with Sisera's flight, a new chapter began. Not with swords, but with a choice only those willing to face the darkness within can make. Jael was no longer a bystander. She stepped into history, not with a cry, but with the most terrifying silence. The silence of a woman preparing to do what no one dared, but God knew must be done. Outside, darkness has swallowed the desert, engulfing the moonlight behind thick clouds like a shroud. The cold of night seeps through every crevice of the canvas tent, making the air inside dense, heavy. A small fire in the corner flickers faintly, like the fragile pulse of a heart guarding a momentous secret. Sisera sleeps. He lies on his side, his breathing heavy, slowing as if he were a beast exhausted after its final chase. The hands that once drove iron chariots, sowing death from village to village, now hang limp, useless as a child's. In that hushed stillness, Jael stands motionless. Not a word, not a wasted movement, but within her, drums of purpose pound like a call from heaven. Before her lies an enemy, a man who has inflicted suffering on countless Israelite families, God's chosen people. Yet beyond him looms a question heavy as a boulder. What will she do? Jael harbors no personal grudge. She has not lost a child or loved one to Sisera. She is the wife of Heber, a Kenite, a man who lives neutral, detached from wars and promises of a promised land. But she has ears to hear. She has heard the stories of mothers weeping for children taken, of wives mourning husbands crushed under chariot heels. And she has eyes to see injustice knocking at her door, and to see the opportunity that God, no one else, has placed in her hands. And she has hands unaccustomed to wielding swords, but steady from years of driving stakes and pitching tents, the daily work of a nomad woman. Those hands now tremble, not from fear, but from knowing that one small act, one moment of courage, could alter history. She steps to the corner of the tent. A long wooden stake still stands there, used to anchor the tent against desert winds. Beside it lies her familiar hammer. Simple tools, never considered weapons, but in God's gaze, no tool is ordinary. Only the heart wielding it determines its sanctity. Jael bends down, lifting the stake with both hands. The wood is hard, but familiar, like the ordinary role she has lived. A woman without a crown, without a prophecy, without promises. Just Jael, a nomad's wife, standing before a moment that could rewrite destiny. She approaches Sisera. He still sleeps, breathing deeply, utterly unaware. In that instant, Jael pauses. She closes her eyes, offering no spoken prayer, but lifting a silent faith to God. A quiet answer, "If this is your will, grant me strength." Then she opens her eyes. No hesitation. With the stake positioned at Sisera's temple and one swift, resolute strike, Jael does what no one else dared. an act not born of hatred, but of justice, not driven by ambition, but by obedience. And the blood that flows from the general's temple is not a symbol of violence, but the closing of a long chapter of oppression. Jael steps back, her hands trembling, but her heart at peace. No cheers erupt, no victory song resounds, only silence in an unnameable sacred presence, as if heaven and earth bow before such courage. In that moment, Jael is no longer just a wife in a lonely tent. She has become an instrument in God's hands, not because she took a life, but because she did not turn away when justice demanded a voice. She sought no glory, yet glory found her. As Deborah's prophecy foretold, the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. No one imagined that woman would be Jael, but perhaps in God's eyes, the greatest deeds always come from the smallest souls when they dare to obey, even with trembling hands grasping the hammer of justice. And in that night, Israel's history turns a new course, not by Barak's sword, not by a mighty army, but through the quiet courage of a woman who looked evil in the face and did not turn away. Dawn slowly breaks over the Kenite land, the first light slipping through barren hills, spilling onto the golden sand as if to purify the shadows lingering from the night before. On a dusty path, the thunder of hooves echoes. Barak, Israel's fierce warrior, urges his horse forward, his eyes tracing the faint footprints etched in the earth. He hunts Sisera, the enemy who slipped away in the dark, like a venomous snake escaping the trap. Barak cannot let him live, but he does not know the chase ended before it began. As Barak nears the Kenite tents, the air seems to still. The early breeze rustles the flapping canvas, carrying scents of milk, smoke, and something unnameable, like the breath of justice freshly wrought. He halts his horse, his gaze meeting a woman standing at the tent's entrance. Jael. She stands there, her hair lightly tousled by the wind, her eyes neither fearful nor proud, only bearing a quiet depth, like the desert after rain. Without waiting for Barak to speak, Jael gently lifts the tent flap and says, in a voice calm yet chilling, "Who do you seek? Come in." Barak dismounts. He has crossed countless battlefields, seen bodies strewn across the ground, tasted the grit of blood and dust, but stepping into Jael's tent, he enters a different realm where justice comes not from swords, but from a woman's hands. In the corner of the tent, Sisera lies motionless. A wooden stake pierces his temple, a symbol of a life ended not by battle, but by a stroke of destiny. Barak stands frozen, no shouts, no curses, only a heavy silence and a wave of awe rising in his heart like an unspoken prayer. Deborah's prophecy echoes in his mind. The Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. And now he stands before its fulfillment, not through a sign from the heavens, but through a quiet act bearing the weight of heaven itself. Not Deborah, not a warrior woman on horseback, but Jael, the nameless wife living on the fringes, amid history's currents she never thought to shape. Yet she, with a tent peg and hammer, with silent faith and courage unseen by any, has become a sacred instrument in God's hands. Barak bows his head, not to Jael, but to the justice fulfilled. Not in rage, but in a silence sharp as a blade. He says nothing, but his heart knows. Some victories need no trumpets, for heaven sings before humanity can speak. Jael does not step from the tent as a hero. No one crowns her with laurels. But in the eyes of the Holy One, glory has found her. Not because she killed, but because she dared to do what was needed at the right time, in the right place, aligned with God's purpose. With a tent peg, a common tool in every nomad woman's hands, Jael rewrote history. With a hammer, not a weapon, but a symbol of labor, duty, and quiet responsibility, she struck down evil, not with hatred, but with faith. This was no assassination, it was an act of worship. And in that moment, the world sees Jael anew. No longer just Heber's wife, no longer an outsider, but a woman of glory, glory not her own, but of a righteous God who chooses the weak to shame the strong, the lowly to topple the proud. In the song that follows, Deborah does not forget Jael. Most blessed of women be Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, most blessed of tent-dwelling women. Judges 5:24. No title surpasses the blessing of God, and Jael, through her obedience, has become a name proclaimed. As Barak leaves the tent, the sun climbs high. The road ahead remains long, but a chapter of history has closed. And amid the hoofprints, the wind carries a story never forgotten. That a woman in a desolate place did not turn away when evil knocked. That she did not stay silent when justice demanded a voice. That glory sometimes lies not in resounding victory, but in humble obedience, carried out by those who place their trust in God, no matter the cost. The battle has faded. The thunder of hooves, the clash of weapons, the shouts on the battlefield, all now echo as distant memories in the parched land. But some things, though silent, burn on, like an unquenched flame in the hearts of those who witnessed. Israel is delivered. Under the leadership of Deborah, prophetess and judge, and the courage of Barak, the chains of oppression are shattered. Sisera, who spread terror for 20 years, is no more. The people praise Jael and those he used to forge victory. But amid the triumphant songs, one name rises like a quiet, powerful breeze: Jael. No one in Israel imagined that the decisive victory would come from a Kenite woman, a foreigner dwelling in the desert without status. No one expected that the one Deborah would call most blessed of tent-dwelling women, Judges 5:24, would be no general, no anointed leader, but a wife, a keeper of tents, a woman seemingly nameless. Yet that's how God works. He does not see as humans see. He does not choose the glamorous or powerful. He chooses those whose hearts are ready. And Jael was ready not to kill, but to obey in a moment of destiny. Jael sought no reward. She did not chase recognition. But because she needed no crown, she became a symbol of active faith, a faith that does not wait for perfect conditions, does not hide behind safe prayers, but dares to rise in the gray space of morality and act for what is right. Jael's deed is not carved on stone. No temple rises in her name. But for thousands of years, Deborah's song endures, a testimony that God still uses the ordinary to achieve the extraordinary. And that lesson, more than ever, lives on today. You might think I am no one, just a mother, a wife, a person with no influence, no voice that carries weight. But if God used Jael, a nameless woman in a desert tent, to change a nation's history, He can use you. No one is too small to be seen by God. No circumstance is too mundane to become fertile ground for his divine purpose. And no one is beyond the reach of his grace. Perhaps you are in your own Kenite tent, a place unnoticed where no one calls your name. But right there, God may place an opportunity, not for you to shine, but for him to be glorified through your simple obedience. When Jael took up the tent peg and hammer, she did not think she was making history. She only did what was right and trusted the one who is right. That is all God needs, and that is all he seeks in us today. If you carry a longing to live for what is right, for justice, for truth, you are not alone. And if you think you are not enough to be used by remember the name Jael, the woman who bore glory not because she sought it, but because she was ready when God called. If Jael's story touches you, don't keep it to yourself, share it. So other women, wondering if God sees them, can hear, he sees, he knows, and he is still calling. Follow our channel to continue this journey of untold stories where grace meets the seemingly nameless and small faith works mighty deeds. For God's history is not finished, and the next one he uses could be you.